When you're shopping for a small car, there's a general rule of thumb that you should follow. If you need space, skip the sedan and go with the hatchback. And that's mostly true of the Toyota Corolla, except what this thing gains in cargo room, it gives up more than its fair share in the back seat. For more expert car reviews, don't forget to share our channel and subscribe so you can catch some of this and maybe even a little of that. There aren't many compact cars left on the market these days, let alone ones that are available in two body styles. So on one hand, I'm happy this Corolla Hatch even exists, but on the other, I just don't think it's as practical as it probably should be. And a big reason why is probably that there's a Corolla wagon that exists in other parts of the world, but that's not the case in Canada, which means there isn't a whole lot of legroom in the back of this thing. Check it out, there's about 5 inches less legroom in the back of this than the Corolla sedan, which is insane, and it's also not the norm. If you take a look at the Subaru Impreza, the Honda Civic, or even the Kia Forte, all of them have identical interior dimensions, whether you're talking about the sedan or the hatchback. Hell, there's even less legroom in the back of this thing than the tiny Mitsubishi Mirage, but that thing doesn't have as much cargo room as this, and that's where you start to see the difference. Nowadays, there's about 660 liters behind the back seats of this thing, which is pretty good. It's not quite as much as the Civic or the Forte, but it is more than the Impreza hatch. There's one downside though, because a couple years ago, Toyota ditched the spare tire. That's great, and it gave you a little inflation kit instead. But the problem is, when you fold down the back seats, they're not flat with the load floor anymore, and that I don't like at all. I really wish they would give you that load floor that's adjustable that you can get in the Hyundai Venue. That way, when you fold the back seats down, you can actually use the whole thing. It's really a handy trick, and it makes a car like this way more practical. Now, this thing is identical to the Corolla sedan from the B-pillars forward, and that's mostly good news. There's a decent amount of space in here, especially because there's no sunroof, though I do still feel like I'm sitting on a phone book. This seat is very high. I'm slouching a little bit, but if I actually sit upright, you can see I am quite tall. I just catch the edge of the sun visor, but like I said, it's not bad for a compact car overall. The bigger issue is there's not a ton of space for small items like wallets and phones. The door pockets aren't all that big. You get 2 cup holders. This bin, it's not very big either. And then there is this little slot up here that in this one I'm driving has a wireless phone charger. It's great because it keeps your phone from sliding around, but it's tucked way up under the dash behind these heated switch toggles. And every time I reach for my phone, I turn them on or off. Now, that's something else I should mention. Heated seats, they are not standard in the Corolla Hatch. If you want them, you have to pay about $2 grand more to get the SE package, and that makes this right around $25,500 before tax for the manual transmission and $1,000 more for the automatic. But it's like I've said about the Corolla in the past. If you can drive stick or you want to learn how, this is a great car to do it in. Now, the clutch travel, it is a little bit long, but it doesn't take too much time to get the hang of it. And the other cool thing is, this car is basically impossible to stall. I'm telling you right now, even with some effort, you are not going to stall this thing, and that's going to inspire confidence when you're getting the hang of this gearbox. And the other cool thing is, it's got auto rev matching, which isn't something you usually see in a compact car. That's usually for proper performance cars like the Honda Civic Type R or the last generation of the Chevy Corvette. So it's kind of cool that it's here. Makes you feel like a hero. Now, obviously this is no Yaris GR, but it does have some peppiness. It uses a 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder. It makes 169 horsepower and 151 pound-feet of torque. That's not a ton of output, but it is more than enough. And when you pair it with this 6-speed manual, there's a ton of guts when you need to pass or merge on the highway. All you got to do is downshift, spike those revs, and off you go. And you know, it does keep the engine speed a little higher than you might expect. Usually you'd think at highway speeds, you'd be cruising around, I don't know, 2,000 RPM. This is about $3,000, but it's not too noisy. And that gearing really does help this thing feel just a little bit peppier than those numbers would have it be on their own. And the last thing I will say about this engine and transmission combo, this is exactly the type of motor you want if you are learning to drive stick. Instead of a turbo that has that low end lag, this has that really linear and progressive torque, and that is going to help you when you're learning how to modulate the throttle and clutch pedals. It's really important, especially when you're rolling away from a stop, that you're not waiting for that torque. It just really starts to roll on as you clutch out. That part is really cool. And the other thing I like about this engine doesn't sacrifice efficiency in the name of just a little more grunt. Now, you can't get the hybrid powertrain in the Corolla Hatch like you can in some other markets. Here, that is reserved for the Corolla Sedan. And if you do want some otherworldly fuel efficiency numbers, go check out my Corolla hybrid review, because it was pretty insane how little gas I was burning. You're gonna have to go and watch that one if you wanna find out exactly how I was doing, but this one isn't bad on its own. Now, officially, with the 6-speed manual, it's rated for 7.6 liters per 100 kilometers combined, and with the automatic, that drops to 6.7 liters per 100, but I've been right in that neighborhood with the manual this week, and I haven't been trying very hard. That part is very cool because I have been having just a little bit of fun, or at least the type of fun that you would expect from a commuter car like this one. Those fuel economy numbers are in line with the Honda Civic hatchback that uses a slightly smaller turbocharged engine. So it is competitive there, but the biggest advantage this has over the Civic is its relative affordability. It starts right around $23,000 before tax. Again, that doesn't get you heated seats or alloy wheels, but it's a decent package. And then this one I'm driving has the SE upgrade package, so it's right around $27,000 before tax. And that means you get alloy wheels, heated seats, a heated steering wheel, blind spot monitoring with rear cross traffic alert, the wireless charger, and satellite radio. That is a key for me. I talk about that a lot. I do like that it's here, and it does make it a competitive package. But if you look at this thing next to the Civic Hatch, well, it starts about $7,000 less, and even with the upgrades that this one has, it's still about $3,000 less. So it is a very appealing package for the price. Now, does it feel like a cheap commuter car? Yeah, and that's why I would say that the SE upgrade is the sweet spot, because it gives you just a little bit more than the base or the SE, but it doesn't take it too far that the rest of this car feels a little bit down market, because some of the plastics in here aren't all that nice. This cloth on the seats, that's just okay. And that's why I think paying about $27,000 before tax for this thing makes a lot of sense, because there is an XSE package on top of this, but that pushes it right up near the $30,000 mark, and it starts to make way less sense in my mind. Now, the cool thing about the advanced safety features, blind spot monitoring, that is the only one that isn't standard. You get everything else right up to and including adaptive cruise control, though understandably, it doesn't work in stop and go traffic with the manual transmission. That's how you stall, but it does work at speeds above, I think, 50 kilometers an hour. If you want it to work in stop and go, you have to get the continuously variable automatic, but like I said, I would give myself some time to consider it before I jump to that transmission. It's just nowhere near as enjoyable as this manual. And then, even though I said the cloth on these seats isn't all that nice, the seats themselves are very comfortable and supportive. They don't wrap around you too much to the point that they're overly constricting, but there's just enough bolstering to keep you from sliding around, and it's kind of firm in a good way, if you get what I mean. And even the back seats, they're not that bad. Aside from the space itself, I do not have anywhere near enough room to sit back there for prolonged periods of time, but the seats themselves are fairly comfortable. And then everything else in here, well, it's easy to use and it's easy to drive. The ride quality is good. It's not too stiff. The only problem is it does get a little noisy with these 18-inch wheels that come with this SE upgrade package. It's the low profile tires. Aside from that noise, it is very user-friendly, and that extends beyond the drive itself. Everything in here just makes a lot of sense. Now, this gets an 8-inch touchscreen. It's not the best out there, but it is responsive, and it's got standard Apple CarPlay and Android Auto connections, which is great. And it's also got a ton of physical controls around it. I love that there's volume and tune knobs, and there are a bunch of buttons, though they're pretty tiny, and the labels for them are pretty small too. They're hard to read at a glance, but I'd prefer to have them than not. And I really do like some of them, like this one that's labeled Map. Now, that's usually something you'd see when you have built-in navigation. This one doesn't, but it does jump to my Google Maps through Apple CarPlay, and that is very cool because it just takes one step out of the process, and that is great. Let's say when you're jumping from audio to maps, if you're out driving around, you don't want to spend too much time moving around the screen to figure out what you want to do. So I like that that shortcut is there. And then same with the HVAC controls. There are a ton of physical controls here. Again, the labels aren't all that big, but I do like the way it's all laid out. It's just a very user-friendly, easy car to drive. Honestly, I think the only thing I would like to see are the heated seat switches moved from down here up onto the console like Toyota did with the new Corolla Cross crossover that just came out. That would make it a lot easier to use them. Now, I do think that that thing is this car's biggest threat now that it's here. Obviously, it's not as fun to drive as this, and you can't get it with a manual. It also doesn't come with this 2-liter engine, but it is more practical. There's more room in the back seats. The cargo area is bigger, and the back seats actually fold flat if you need to maximize the space inside, and those really aren't good signs for this Corolla hatch. Now, here's the deal. I would consider this car because it's not bad in general, but if I were shopping for it, I would take a look at both the Corolla Cross and the Corolla Sedan at the very least. That is the biggest thing I'm hung up on, is the overall practicality of this thing. To recap, I like the size of the cargo area behind the back seats, that this Corolla hatch is fun to drive for a commuter car, and the overall on-road comfort it delivers. I don't like that heated seats aren't standard, how cramped the back seats are, or that they don't fold flat. I've always considered myself a hatchback guy, and so I'm a little disappointed in how tight the back seats are in this Corolla hatch. Again, it's not a bad car overall. I just don't think I could live with something that sacrificed so much space for passengers. If you're not as concerned about it as I am, then don't hesitate to set your sights on this fairly affordable hatchback. But if you do think you'll need just a little more room for people, don't forget to check out your other options out there too.